So hi everybody, happy to share with you some of the work that we are doing in the area of computational sustainability at Georgia Tech. So a big focus of my research has been on biodiversity conservation. And so biodiversity conservation is a key sustainability goal. However, often conservation targets and priorities are set considering only ecological benefits. And in fact, a report to the President by the Council of Advisors on Science and Technology in 2011 highlighted the need that conservation programs should prioritize expenditures based on their cost effectiveness. And why this is really not done as often as it should is because prioritizing based on costs actually necessitates solving very challenging computational problems that involve discrete optimization and network design. And often the people making conservation decisions don't have those models and tools at their fingertips. And so a lot of my work at Cornell as a PhD, as a postdoc, and later at Georgia Tech has been developing methods that support conservation of landscape connectivity using network design optimization approaches. And this has been an extremely fruitful line of research where basically a lot of diverse conservation problems boil down to these novel network design problems that require development of general models and methods to solve them, which later we also were able to argue are applicable to a much broader set of applications well beyond the conservation setting. So these include things like budget constraints, Steiner network, subgraph problem, minimum delay, generalized Steiner network, etc. And so recently we applied some of these models in the setting of multi-species corridor design. So this is a paper that just recently got accepted to conservation biology in collaboration with Cornell, the US Forest Service and OSU, where we looked at how these methods can really inform conservation planning across multiple species and across diverse budget in a systematic way. So our case study was of grizzlies and wolverines in Montana, and basically what our results showed that is if you optimize only for ecological benefits, you obtain very good resistances, but the cost is dramatically different than the minimum cost solutions if you only pay attention to your economic costs. So it goes from 3 million to 32 million, but on the other hand, only optimizing for economic costs results in very bad ecological benefits. So ideally, one would like to explore what's in between, and that's where these NP-hard combinatorial optimization problems arise, for which we develop our models and methods. And so with this methodology, we are able to actually systematically study the trade-offs between the two species and basically inform conservation planners of how, for example, shifting from prioritizing grizzlies will result in changes in resistance in the optimum conservation plans for a particular budget, such as 4 million, versus if you shift priorities towards wolverines. And in addition to these species trade-offs that now can be studied in a systematic, cost-effective way, we can also study of what are the marginal benefits of slightly increasing the budget from a certain level to another level. And these results basically show that sometimes with just a slight increase of budget over actually the minimum cost solution, you can obtain ecological benefits which are dramatically better than when you ignore ecological benefits. And so overall, this is a very representative study of how the power of computational techniques can really help conservation planners make more effective decisions. So again, as Angela mentioned, my student Amrita Gupta is going to present a poster this afternoon on our newest work on conservation planning, where we develop models for optimizing jointly for abundance and connectivity with applications to Indian bear conservation. Okay, so another problem that started at Cornell was the problem of the red-cockaded woodpecker conservation, which is really like as an umbrella problem is how do we make decisions about conservation investments when we want to optimize expected abundance or expected population sometime in the future, and what we're given is a stochastic metapopulation model for the dynamics of the species. So this is again a network design problem, but with a much harder twist because we have actually a stochastic optimization problem at our hands. And in fact, there's many more other applications in sustainability areas involving the same underlying computational problem. And this problem is one of optimizing network structure with respect to some stochastic diffusion. So in the example I just gave, we are trying to optimize species diffusion, but that could also be minimizing the stochastic spread of a disease, or of a contamination in river networks, or of invasive species, or outages in the power grid, or maximizing the spread information in a human network. And so generally what we would like to do is to manipulate the underlying network by adding, deleting nodes or edges in order to influence these diffusion processes. And so what we have done is basically generate some of state-of-the-art results with respect to this problem of diffusion-aware optimization network design, where for the independent cascade model, together with Dan Sheldon, we have a UI paper in 2010 where we design a methodology based on mixed integer programming and sample average approximation to add nodes to a network under the independent cascade model. And we show that this methodology can generate solutions with approximation guarantees, but more importantly that these solutions were structurally very different than the ones obtained by simple heuristic methods, right? And one caveat of that was that this methodology is not very scalable because, again, in the worst case, it will take an exponential time. So under another very popular diffusion model, the linear threshold model, recently in a KDD paper with my student Elias Khalil, we showed that there the problem becomes super modular minimization or maximization, depending on whether you're trying to stop the spread or amplify the spread. And together with this result and some careful data structure engineering and caching, we developed a method that provides approximation guarantees, but runs only in linear time and space. And so it can scale to networks with millions of nodes. So the third popular diffusion model is the susceptible infected recovered problem, and that was the only model for which other people had generated results like that based on eigenvalue optimization. So some of the more kind of recent focus of my research is on coupled natural and human systems under climate change. And basically with collaborators from Georgia Tech, we are trying to answer the following questions. As human populations and animal habitats concurrently shift under climate change, how will these systems interact? Are they going to conflict? Where are going to be the trade-offs, etc.? And in order to answer these questions, we need a framework that couples a model of human migrations and movements and urban growth together with a model of how the species habitat is going to shrink, expand, and shift, and also looking at consensus regions of movements that can support the needs for multiple species across different climate projections. So for the species movement part, we have been working with a biology faculty at Georgia Tech, Jenny Maguire, and an undergraduate student of mine, Renee Bach, and where we developed a scalable R package which supports species habitat predictions in a very parallelizable and scalable way, and it supports all the best practices in species distribution modeling, including removing outliers, background extent, subsampling occurrences based on the environment, and assembling across multiple models of species habitat. So using this tool, we have been studying the shifts in habitats of species in the southeast, which is highly susceptible to climate change. And with these results, we can generate plots like that, which basically show how the dynamics change over time. So here you have results for 4 different decades, from present all the way to 27. And with the colors, you can see areas where the habitat waxes and wanes across years, areas of expansions here in blue, and areas of shrinkages of habitats in red. And so combining this across hundreds of species, our goal is to study these consensus movement regions across whole assemblages and across, again, different climate scenarios. So the other side of this research is the human migration modeling, and here we are interested to understand what will happen to human movements as some of the coastal areas get inundated and submerged underwater. Obviously, there's a direct effect that everybody reports, what kind of fraction of the population is going to be underwater in 2060, etc. But there is also very interesting indirect dynamics where these people will have to migrate somewhere, and therefore they're going to affect the places where they go. Additionally, people in other areas which are not directly affected by sea level rise will change their migration patterns by avoiding these coastal areas that will be inundated. And so based on this idea, we are developing these migration models which can incorporate the forced population movements due to sea level rise, and looking at future dynamics under different future scenarios, and also trying to exploit machine learning techniques to make these prediction models better. So this is joint work with an economics faculty at Georgia Tech, Juan Moreno Cruz, and my PhD student Caleb, who is here, and tomorrow is going to give a poster on this work. So here is, for example, under 2 meter sea level rise that directly affected counties. However, here is the one hope indirect effects of where these people will go. At least our prediction of the counties where they're going to choose to migrate, to move away from their current area. And additionally, the two hop away indirect effects of how different, what is the change in migration patterns of people living in areas that are not directly inundated, but which are changing where they're going to go because of avoiding the coastal areas. So as you can see in blue, they're avoiding the coastal areas but going to nearby counties, and then the overall these indirect effects of sea level rise. So our goal is to basically couple these species movement dynamics with the human migration dynamics to answer intricate questions about trade-offs between human well-being and species persistence, and where and when those conflicts are going to occur. So overall, the Georgia Tech's CompSust mission is to develop combinatorial optimization and machine learning models to support biodiversity conservation, sustainable urban design, and study coupled dynamics of humans and species. We also recently got an NSF CRISP grant, which is going to focus on sustainable and resilient design of interdependent water and energy systems. I didn't manage to tell you about some of the other research that my group has done, including improving the state-of-the-art in combinatorial optimization for mixed integer programs, where we propose novel approaches injecting machine learning in branch and bound methods in a paper published this year at AAAI, as well as novel methods for extremely large-scale combinatorial black box optimization problems. Where we leverage the active learning, surrogate function learning, and genetic algorithms. This is a paper that will be presented this month at GECO, and it was applied to sustainable building design. So thank you very much.